Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is George Floyd, and welcome to Story Hour. You know, I started this thing to provide an entertainment alternative to binge watching Tiger King or that 70 show or whatever during COVID shelter in place. But it's become a little more than that, at least to me. I think now more than ever, we need stories. And especially we need science fiction and fantasy stories, that mind-bending otherness that somehow centers us. I mean, that's why we all read and why some of us write fantastic literature. When I was a kid, very overweight, cross-eyed, club-footed, these Coke bottle glasses, giant orthopedic shoes, completely betrayed by my body. And I had this kind of large brain that I didn't really know how to operate. Science fiction saved me. It really did. Being able to immerse myself in other worlds, have them become a part of me, somehow really helped me to figure out who I was in this one. And I truly don't know what I would have done as a kid if I didn't have that. So I think we all need stories, especially now in the midst of this soft apocalypse that we're in the middle of. Not necessarily didactic stories that teach us lessons or polemics to fire us up. And there's a place for that, for sure. But just stories, love stories, sad stories, scary stories, funny stories, transgressive stories. The fictive dream, the beautiful lie. A few people sitting around the fire spinning bullshit to help each other make sense of the world. Stories strengthen our empathy muscles. They make us better. I really believe that. So tonight we have a great program. I'm really, really excited to welcome Cliff Winnig and Meg Elison. If you're here via Zoom, please mute your mic, but feel free to leave your camera on if you're so inclined. We're always happy to see you. Feel free to use chat. Our Facebook Live friends, feel free to comment as well, although of course we can't see you. Before we get rolling, our traditional weekly PSA, this one's suggested by Meg. Thanks, Meg. If you're fortunate enough to be in a position to help, please consider People's Breakfast Oakland. PBO, People's Breakfast Oakland, is a grassroots Black socialist political organization which provides essential resources to the houseless community. Founded in 2017, the organization has provided clothing and hygiene packs to over 5,000 Oakland residents. Stop and think about that. 5,000 local folks. You read about these big national or global organizations. The numbers are significant, but they don't mean much viscerally. But it's a much bigger number when you think about the local impact. That's 5,000 for local Bay Area folks. That's 5,000 humans that this organization has reached, one human at a time. That's phenomenal. Or if you're Seattle or LA or New York or whatever, think about changing the lives of 5,000 local folk. So please, if you can, help out. The website is www.hellablackpod.com/PBO. Hella Black Pod, as you may have guessed, is also a podcast. So on to the goods. We're going to start with Cliff. Cliff's stories have appeared in several anthologies, most recently Straight Out of Deadwood, on Escape Pod, and in magazines, including the winter 2020 issue of Mad Scientist Journal. I really want to see that one. He's also sold tweet-length stories to the Twitter zines Outshine and Thaumatrope. He's a Clarion grad, like some of us, and has in turn taught writing workshops at local science fiction conventions. Yay, FogCon! As well as a continuing ed course on the history of science fiction. Cliff is also a musician. He plays sitar and sings bass and baritone. Cliff, it turns out so do I. When we get post-COVID, we should get a quartet together and read some charts. When my kid was in middle school, I wrote an arrangement of Teen Angel for the school choir, which they refused to perform because it was about death, or it mentioned death. So, go figure. You can run, but you can't hide, right? Cliff has done social dance, including ballroom, swing, salsa, and Argentine tango, and martial arts, including karate, aikido, and tai chi. He lives with his family in Silicon Valley, which constantly inspires him to think about the future. He can be found online @Winnig and cliffwinnig.com. Over to you, Cliff.
Hi. So here is that Mad Scientist journal.
Awesome.
I have paper copies, but I didn't bring them upstairs. So, but you can get it paperback or whatever. But I'm not going to read that tonight because that's a humor piece, and you really kind of need an audience, like laughing or not laughing, staring at you with stony silence, to work with that. So I'm going to read from a story that was in this book, When the Hero Comes Home 2, edited by Gabrielle Harboe and Ed Greenwood. And the story is called The Call of the Sky. And it's narrated, first-person narrator is a 30-something Korean-American woman, and I am not, so you'll have to use your imagination. Call of the Sky. Oh, and I'm going to do a trick that I got off Walter John Williams, which is section breaks, I take a sip of water. The Army hospital's underground floors reminded me of Pluto Base, a place I'd never actually been. I'd never been off-world, but I remembered those claustrophobic beige corridors. 2 years before, I'd synced with a bunch of my alts, home on leave after basic training. Today, for the first time, I'd be meeting one who'd seen combat. More than that, one who'd become a hero, the only Terry Kang to survive the Battle of Karen. We wouldn't be sinking, though. Not this time. Not ever. Before she'd escaped the doomed moon, the moon she'd given the order to destroy, she'd been bitten. That's what the GIs called it when the hive nanobots infected you, being bitten. Like it was a zombie plague or something. Hell, it might as well be. Soon the only other Terry Kang in the universe would lose her fight with that infection, and the army docs would euthanize her. Under the circumstances, even coming home had been an act of courage. A lot of GIs who got bitten went AWOL rather than face the certain death of returning to base. Not for the first time, I wondered if I had such courage lying latent within me. Flanked by MPs, I followed a nurse down hallway after hallway till we arrived at my alt's room. Well, the room next to it, since she was quarantined. A smart glass wall separated me from the sterile chamber where the other Terry Kang would live out her last few hours. I found her sitting at a desk, reading a news feed it projected in the air. She'd propped her head in her hands, elbows on the gray metal surface. I sometimes read like that, but only when sick or exhausted. She looked to be both. Right then, the anti-hive nanobots they'd pumped her full of were fighting a battle every bit as pitched as the one she'd fought on Karen, one that would end for her the same way it had ended for the moon. Hearing me enter, she raised her head and swiveled to face me. She moved as if her joints didn't ache, as if she weren't already running a fever, but I could tell. The MPs stationed themselves outside the door, and the nurse made his exit. That left us alone, save for the hidden cameras we both knew were watching. My alt rose to her feet and put her hand against the glass. Hi, homebody. Glad you could make it. That's what they called me, homebody. The only Terry Kang who hadn't enlisted when the hive invaded. The one who'd stayed safe at home, teaching military history and Taekwondo at the University of Chicago, unwilling to drop tenure for a chance to help save the human race. I made a show of taking her in, head to toe, a sick and dying soldierly version of myself. I've looked better, I said. This made her smile, as I'd hoped it would. Still, it was true. Her short hospital gown revealed dozens of half-healed scars on her arms, legs, and face. Repair nanobots can only work so fast, and hers had double duty, helping their brethren fight against the hive. Though she'd pulled her hair back in the same ponytail I wore at the dojang, loose strands clung to her face and neck. Her skin was ashen, and the circles under her eyes were dark, as if she hadn't slept in days. Still, she looked better than she would an hour or two from now. True enough, she said. All in all, I'm glad you didn't stop to run errands on the way over. Though you could have brought pizza. I really miss Giordano's. You can't get stuffed pizza in space? Nope. She shook her head, then grinned. It's the only drawback, though. I stepped up to the glass and put my hand against hers, right against left. I wanted to embrace her, to comfort her, but I settled for what I could get. The glass could have been a magic mirror opening onto some other world where the person staring back at me was a stranger. I met her brown eyes with my own. My boyfriend Dave calls them soulful, and he's right insofar as they're windows to the soul. People used to say that before they could sink souls directly. So it was again for Terry and me. Eyes would have to do, and words. We need to talk, she said, and glanced to her left. I followed her gaze back to our twinned hands, noticed the plain gold ring on hers. The sudden force of that knowledge hit me harder than the news of my alt's deaths, a whole unit of my alts dying, and the one survivor hours away from her own extermination. I'd been grimly determined to face my future solitude without giving into despair, but to see then how much I'd missed of the past, a past we could no longer share. I backed away from the glass and sat down hard on the bench that was the only furniture on my side. You got married? She smiled at me, and it was a sad smile. We all got married. Well, all of us who were in space. To the same person? She nodded and lowered her hand from the glass. Things get complex enough when you're sharing multiple bodies, so all of us married all of her. We make do, though unlike me, my wife doesn't serve in the same units as herself. We wanted to tell you. Hell, we wanted you to meet her, to come to the wedding, even if you didn't want to opt into it. But it all took place during a security blackout. You wouldn't be here now if I hadn't pulled strings. After Karen, I finally had the clout. Good to know some benefits come with being a hero. Since we couldn't tell you then, Terry said, I wanted to tell you in person. Sure. She gave me a moment to finish digesting the news. While I sat there, she plopped down in her swivel chair, watching me the whole time. So, I said, tell me about her. I can do better than that. One of her alts rode down with me. She didn't get bitten, so I imagine she's up on the roof. It'll be nighttime soon, and she doesn't like to lose sight of the stars. I shook my head, stood up, and started pacing the room. She'll have a rough time with that. Too cloudy. Ah, yes, Chicago. Her eyes followed my nervous movement. She can fill you in on our marriage later. First, we need to talk about the war. I asked her to give us some time alone together, but I don't want to keep her waiting too long. What's her name? At least give me that. My alt rubbed her forehead. Of course, it's Shanti Jane. She's a colonel. Well, most of her anyway. One of her alts just made general. Military rank for alts is a delicate affair. It's still new enough that the rules keep changing. She's a great strategist, good at predicting the hive's movements. Terry told me of Shanti's military career, clearly proud of her accomplishments, though nothing about how they'd met or fallen in love. After a minute or two, she switched back to us. I've gotten you clearance. A little bureaucratic trick. You're still a civilian, but you've been reclassified as me. At least as far as the Army's concerned. You'll have paperwork to sign, of course, when you leave. I stopped pacing and turned to stare at her. You're serious? She nodded once. You want me to enlist, don't you? You want me to enlist and fork a bunch of alts into vat-grown bodies and recreate your damned Alteri unit. You want me to pick up where you left off, blow up some other moon and die a hero. I was shaking, waving my hands. I knew I was overreacting, could feel it, but I couldn't stop myself. If my outburst had upset her, she gave no sign. She just cut past what I'd said to what I thought. I miss them too, homebody. I wish you'd gotten to meet more of us, to sync with more of us. But once they deployed us in covert ops, well, even if we had gotten shore leave on Earth, we couldn't have synced with you. Only now, after Karen. Karen, I shouted. What's so big about Karen? So you blew up a moon. Give me enough explosives and I could do the same thing. She cocked her head sideways, measuring me. I folded my arms and held my ground. We went on like this for a minute or two while I fought the urge to resume pacing. Then she smiled a half smile, though her eyes stayed serious. Could you? Knowing that more than 1,000 uninfected troops remained on the surface? Knowing that all your alts, your best friends, your comrades in arms were there too? Could you, if it had to be done? I looked down at my feet. I don't know, I whispered. When I lifted my eyes again, I'm sure she saw the anguish in my face. When I lifted my eyes again, I'm sure she saw the anguish there. She nodded, approving of whatever she did see. That is the beginning of wisdom. I chuckled. Now you just sound patronizing. Her half smile blossomed into a full one. I leave that to the professors. Touché. So, if you're not here to recruit me, why did you come home? It can't be for the scenery. They're not letting you leave the room. Now she laughed. Actually, I am here to recruit you. I sat back down, not trusting myself to speak. Only as an advisor. Earth needs you. Humanity needs you. The hive will keep coming, and we need your mind, your experience. Before our alts died on Karen, the docs started growing another batch of bodies. We were going to double ourselves, make another unit. That won't happen now, of course. We still haven't perfected out-of-body mind backups. So after I'm gone, that's it. Unless, that is, you fork a new set of alts into those bodies. You could really make a difference. You know you'd work well together, and you wouldn't be alone. I stood up, met her stare with my own. I think it's time I fetched your wife. At least think about it, okay? I crossed the door, which opened as I approached. Beyond, the MPs stood ready to escort me away. From the roof, I could see for miles in any direction, though the space elevator loomed over it all. Its shadow cut across nearby O'Hare, sliced the freeway in half, and fell like the Mongol hordes onto the buildings to the east. And it kept going, crossing the lake to the distant horizon. I hated the damn thing. Dave says its power lies in our constant connection to space, but it tore me apart, split me from myself. I had 3 alts at the start of the war, and all of them rode its boxy cars 200 miles straight up. When they forked more alts, they did it without me. When they died, they left me behind like an old photograph, an image locked in the past. I found their wife at the edge of the roof, in the shadow of that great carbon tube. She stood at ease, hands behind her back, and stared toward downtown. A strip of her light brown neck showed below black hair shorn close to her scalp, above the collar of her khaki uniform. About my height, slender like a gymnast. When she turned at my approach, I saw delicate features joined to a strong jaw by the elegant curve of her face. But her eyes, impossibly blue, commanded my attention. I'd never seen blue eyes on a South Asian before, yet hers didn't look out of place. They looked like the eyes of a goddess. I could see why my alts had fallen for her. Colonel Jane? I saw in her face an instant of joy, one that vanished when her subconscious caught up to what she knew to be true. I wasn't her wife. I was just her wife's alt. Nonetheless, she smiled at me, her teeth bright in the fading light. You can call me Shanti. We shook hands, her grip firm and businesslike. Terry's told me all about you, I said. Shanti raised an eyebrow. Has she? That's too bad. I hope we'll get along anyway. I laughed, feeling the grief float away. if only for the moment. She said you have alts, but you don't work alongside them. Shanti nodded. I don't get along with myself like Terry does. She works better with herself than anyone else. The perfect balance between loner and group thinker. It's why she's so effective tactically. Did she tell you how she contained 13 separate hive incursions on Charon, kept them from escaping the moon, from spreading to Pluto base long enough for 90% of our ground forces to evacuate? I'd worked out the seismic stress points, the places she'd have to place the bombs. Even while holding off the enemy, she positioned herself perfectly. She told me the story as we crossed the roof to the stairwell. Her boots loud next to my sneakers. I wasn't used to picturing places I'd never seen, not even in still images. But as she spoke, I felt as if I too had been there with my sisters in arms, fighting the hive-infected people and aliens. The hive weren't a species, like Homo sapiens. They were a collection of every species they'd absorbed. Some of the soldiers we'd fought had been human, but even more flew or hopped or slithered their way across the battlefields of Charon, all bent on using the moon as a staging ground to infect Earth's main base in the Kuiper Belt. Shanti's face glowed with pride as she spoke of her joint accomplishment with Terry. She'd worked remotely with her other selves to plan the overall strategy, and the Terry Kang unit had executed it brilliantly. Then her face showed the next logical step, her wife's decision to sacrifice herself so that more of the other troops could escape. She broke eye contact and turned back toward the city. I've never been to Chicago. I've been given a few days, so before I return, I can show you around, play native guide. You can meet Dave. She raised a quizzical eyebrow. My boyfriend. Ah. Shanti opened the door to the stairs. Well, let's go below. How was she when you left? We exited the stairs on the first floor, then passed a checkpoint to enter the underground levels, and another one for Terry's floor. By the time we got back, we could see it wouldn't be long. Shanti approached the glass and put her hand up as Terry had with me. My alt stood with effort to return the gesture. I sat quietly on the bench, barely even breathed. At length, Shanti lowered her hand and sat down beside me. Terry shuffled to her cot, where she lay still and closed her eyes. Her breathing labored. Within minutes, she'd soaked her gown with sweat so that bits of the material fell apart. Her chest rose and fell, its rhythm growing uneven. She began to thrash, to call out, names from our shared childhood, names I didn't recognize, from after we'd forked. Safe on our side of the barrier, Shanti and I watched in silence. Sometime during that final hour, she took my hand. Terry moaned and bucked, then lay still, unconscious at last. After maybe 20 minutes, she sat up and rubbed her eyes, as if she'd merely woken from a nap. She turned to face the glass, but she looked past us into the middle distance. The sky, she said. The sky is calling. That's when the door to our room opened. The nurse returned, the MPs right behind him. In quiet, professional tones, he told us to say goodbye and leave. It was time, he said. I took one last look at myself and followed Shanti out to the cold, empty corridor. It's a curious thing to see yourself for the last time, to know you're truly alone again. When alt technology became affordable years before the war, I felt drawn to the way it opened up possibilities. I could take different life paths, sync memories, and so explore them all. I knew intellectually a day like this might come, yet my new solitude felt stranger than my younger self, the self who underlay all my alts, could have imagined. I took comfort in the mundane rituals of death. The funeral was short and dignified. Apart from the chaplain, only Shanti, Dave, and I attended. Afterwards, we took an air car back to the apartment I shared with Dave in the Hyde Park neighborhood near the university. Ever thoughtful, Dave asked Shanti what she'd like to do. We could have a simple meal, he said, or order in. Or he and I could go out for a bit and give her some space. He took care not to give the impression he'd prefer any particular option. Thanks, Shanti said. but I've always been partial to wakes. She flashed us a sad smile that reminded me of my alts. Terry was always on about the pizza here. Though they gave me a few days, I've decided to head back in the morning. Too much needs doing up there. Still, I'd like to try the Chicago-style pizza thing before I go. I'll order takeout and bring it back, Dave said. Give you two a chance to unwind here. He called in the order, then bundled up and headed out, even though it wouldn't be ready for 40 minutes. I dashed after him, catching him in the drafty hall that led to the stairwell. Why the rush, Dave? I thought you might like some time together. I mean, it's not like I don't trust you. It stung that he'd even thought along those lines. She's her widow, not my wife. He held up his gloved hand, surrendered. Of course. But you both have a bond to the deceased. I don't share. Dave's a good guy, but he's a singleton. He never even considered forking alts. He knew I had alts, but I'd met him after the war. Maybe for him, they were a distant thing, a theoretical possibility. Terry and Shanti's appearance had made the theoretical uncomfortably real. Sure, I said. I hugged him briefly, then let him go. He headed downstairs without another word and out into the autumn night. Back in the apartment, I found Shanti had helped herself to our scotch. She'd poured 2 glasses, though, and handed me one before raising hers. To Earth, she said. How I'll miss her. We clinked glasses and drank. She downed hers, but I took a sip. I just took a sip. Dave and I usually drank wine, and we seldom had a second glass. Shanti crossed to the living room window. That side of the building overlooked a small park. You know what makes Earth great? I shrugged, though she couldn't see the gesture. Stuffed pizza? Nah, I haven't even had it yet. She used her empty shot glass to point to the trees outside. Life. It's brimming with life. In space, we make our bubbles, build our habitats, but here it literally bursts out of the ground. And humanity, oh, that was quite an achievement. She turned back to me, her face unreadable. Okay, homebody, it's truth time. Did Terry tell you what's happening up there? What it's really like? Some. I'll tell you the rest. But first, a question. Before you had clearance, when you were just another civilian, what did you know or guess? I frowned and took another sip of scotch. People wonder. It's no secret the hive first showed up at the Oort cloud, infected a few miners, then swarmed its way inward to the Kuiper belt. Shanti nodded. That much is declassified. I imagine everyone on Earth knows about Pluto base. Yeah, and Charon too. It's not like you could hide an exploding moon from all the amateur astronomers, as you say. What I've been wondering, what I still wonder, is this. As the name implies, the Oort cloud's a rough sphere. The Kuiper belt, like the asteroid belt and all the planets, lies in the plane of the ecliptic. It's not talked about, but if you do any digging, you find the first comet miners attacked were in a part of the Oort cloud 40 degrees north of the ecliptic. And Shanti crossed the room to the bottle and refilled her glass. If the hive wants to, in fact, infect humanity, why is it mucking around fighting our forces in the Kuiper belt? Why don't they just fly in from the Oort cloud directly to Earth? Shanti downed her second shot. Why indeed? On Earth, the hive was a distant concern, way out in the Kuiper belt. We knew they were gunning for us, wanting to make us their latest acquisition, but we had faith. Faith in our united armed forces, faith in the human spirit. Terry'd had that faith as well, and she'd had a much more informed view of our chances. Shanti seemed to follow the trail of my thoughts. You're just like her, she scowled, as if the very idea angered her. I could see Iwo Jima in your eyes. I cocked my head sideways, studying her. You mean the statue of the Marines raising the US flag? She snorted. The military history prof gets it in one. You think we can beat the hive, don't you? We just need the kind of spirit embodied by that image, and we can beat them. Stay human. Terry thought so, I said quietly. She didn't reply, but I saw in her face I just entered a long-standing argument between them. Shanti put down her glass and strode to the apartment door. Come on, we've got a few minutes till Dave gets back. Let's go outside. Shrugging on my coat, I followed her out to the park. She didn't bother with her own coat, wearing only her dress uniform. Leaves crunched under her boots as she hiked to the clearing in the center. There she stood, waiting for me to catch up. Do you know how cold it is out here? I said. I'm okay. It's colder on Pluto. She pointed up at the sky. Look, there's a break in the clouds. It was true. Most of Orion floated above, twinkling. See anyone you know of? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. She shook her head. Too few remain. Then why are you going back so soon? I've lost a piece of myself, sure, but it's not the same. You lost your wife. All of your wife. I suddenly felt embarrassed, knowing myself a mere doppelganger. She looked at me. Even in the cloud-obscured moonlight, her eyes shone blue. You think I need more time to grieve? Is that it? Why not? She turned back to the stars. I'm not grieving. You heard Terry there at the end, same as I did. The sky called to her. That was her hive nanobots making a connection, despite all the EM blocking fields and 24 floors between her and the rest of the hive. The army killed her, put her down like a rabid dog, but not before part of her uploaded to the hive. Maybe only a small part, but a part. She turned to me, her jaw set. No offense, but it wasn't worth most of her dying just to talk to you. I could see it then, almost as if Terry and I'd synced, how she'd urged my alt to go AWOL when she'd been bitten, despite knowing that when the hive took her over, she'd give them all her military secrets. This point, it's 7:30. I've got a little bit more to read. Meg, do you want me to stop, or how long is your bit?
22 minutes.
20 what?
22.
Okay, can I go another 2 or 3 minutes?
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Go for
All
it.
right. I could see it then, almost as if Terry and I'd synced, how she'd urged my alt to go AWOL when she'd been bitten, despite knowing that when the hive took her over, she'd give them all her military secrets. Charon's not the only time we engaged them, Shanti said, still watching the sky. We'd lose someone would get bitten, and we'd shoot them, take them out completely, headshot and all. Then a week or a month would go by, and we'd see them again, maybe looking just like before, maybe in some crazy body with tentacles and fish eyes and an exoskeleton, but the thing would speak in their voice, their speech patterns, no stuff only they knew. We'd blow it away, but then, sure as anything, they'd be back again the next time we fought. I didn't know what to say to that, or even how I felt about it. Violated, maybe? Relieved? That ghastly combination silenced me while wheels within wheels spun in my head. They're up there, Shanti said, waiting for you, me, and the rest of humanity. You want to know why the hive didn't just skip the Kuiper Belt and go straight to Earth? They don't want to miss anyone. They're here to make us all hive. Everyone. Certainly every human, but maybe every animal too, or at least every mammal. For all I know, they might integrate the trees. She gestured at the ring of oaks around us. They preserve everything, link it all up. And really, is that so different from what we do, splitting our minds among multiple bodies? Did we become the hive even before we started to fight them? Who's to say it's not humanity who will wind up running the place once we're on board? But we won it, Karen, I growled, sounding to my own ears like all my military alts. We saved Pluto base. We're fighting them still. Shanti waved a hand, dismissing the notion. A rear guard action, a delaying tactic. They're coming, homebody. They'll take Pluto base, maybe next week, maybe next month. Then they'll take Titan and Europa and Mars. They'll swallow Earth and keep going until they've got the whole damned solar system. She smiled, then looked back at the sky. After that, they'll move on. Only we'll be there too. Humanity's oldest dream, to touch the stars. I followed her gaze to the deceptively quiet night sky. The clouds had broken apart and blown away, leaving a vast starscape arching above. Do all the troops feel like you do? I asked. Shanti shrugged as if such concerns were irrelevant. Everyone at HQ. Then why fight them at all? Why not give in and let yourselves get taken over become a bunch of marionettes? Believe me, I've thought about it. Terry did too, though her stubborn streak went out, her insistence on staying human, as she called it. Still, I thought there might be more than one way to merge with the hive. Who says we have to do it on their terms? They'll take us in, pull our strings, as you say. That's inevitable. But before they do, right up to the last moment, even as we get absorbed, we could show them what Terry showed them, the human spirit. We stood in silence for a minute or two while I followed her logic, digested her philosophy. I felt the latter infect me, as if it too were a hive nanobot swarm. Though I fought against it, I doubted the human spirit would survive inside the hive. That's when my path, and the path for all my future alts, unfolded before me. Take me with you, I said. I didn't think about Dave before I spoke. I loved him, had figured someday I'd marry him, but now I couldn't see it, not unless I went up there and turned the tide of the war. Shanti raised an eyebrow, though she didn't say anything. I wondered if Terry had even told her she'd offer me that new batch of alts if I joined the cause. Not as a soldier, I said, and not as your wife, as a civilian advisor. I've already got clearance and I've got millennia of military history under my belt. I bet I can come up with a thing or two. I bet you could, but it's out of the question. Stay here. Enjoy your time with Dave. We'll all meet up again one way or another. Colonel Shanti Jane was brave, a good soldier, no doubt a brilliant strategist, but she wasn't a hero, not like Terry had been. The war had gotten to her. Maybe I couldn't help her or anyone else at HQ if they truly thought as she did, but I could try. I could make a difference. So I pulled out my trump card, one I hoped still had weight with her. Terry believed in me, I said. That's why she came home. Shanti frowned. You really think you can find a way to defeat the hive? We'll find it together. She stared at me with those eyes like twin blue suns. All right. Her gaze flicked back to the apartment building and she hugged herself, as if the cold were finally getting to her despite her protest. Let's go back inside. I want to catch the morning car up the shaft, and you need to pack. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cliff. I really enjoyed that. Nothing like a good alien invasion story. Our next reader, Meg Elison. Meg is a science fiction author and feminist essayist. Her series, The Road to Nowhere, won the Philip K. Dick Award in 2014. And she was a Tiptree Award honoree in 2018. As you all know, the Tiptree Award is now called the Otherwise Award. In 2020, she's publishing her first collection called Big Girl with PM Press, which is a great shop. That's really exciting. And her first young adult novel, Find Layla, with Skyscape. Meg's been published in McSweeney's, Fantasy and Science Fiction, Fangoria. Now there is a great writing credit, Fangoria, Uncanny, Lightspeed, Nightmare, and many other venues. Ellison's a high school dropout. Elison, I'm sorry, is a high school dropout and a UC Berkeley graduate. I would say go Bears if I gave a shit about football. Find her online where she writes like she's running out of time, as are we all. Take it away, Meg.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to read the title story from my collection, Big Girl, which was, as just mentioned, published by PM Press last month. This is the story, by the way, that got me the Otherwise/Tiptree nod in 2018, so I hope you like it. The girl woke up with a sore neck and 3 seagulls perched on her eyelashes. As her eyes fluttered open, the seagulls flapped away. They squawked in alarm, but continued in the pre-gray dawn light. She shook her head a little, still not fully awake. She blinked a few times, and the men on the fishing boat saw a chunk of yellow sleep crust the size of a bike tire fall from her eye and splash in the water beside them. As she stepped into the water, the boat rocked as if it were passing in the wake of a much larger ship. She blundered forward, slipping and falling to her knees. The impact registered as a 3.1 on a nearby seismograph, and the wave pushed the boat out to the end of its anchor chain. Her dark hair hung over her face, but when she began to wail her disorientation, it blew out in front of her mouth like black banners caught in the wind. The fishermen pulled their anchor in a panic. The girl stood up to her full height, towering over the Richmond Bridge, apparently realizing she was naked, and covered herself with her arms. She was still standing there with her arms crossed tight over her breasts when the first helicopters arrived. From sfgate.com, Reports are coming in that a huge inflatable sex doll has been spotted floating near the Richmond Bridge. Tweet sightings or pics to @SFGate. From the San Francisco Chronicle. Early reports of an inflatable woman or large art installation near the Richmond Bridge this morning have been confirmed via independent footage acquired by the Chronicle today. The drone video shows that the object is animated, some speculate by radio control. The object resembles a human female and is approximately 350 feet tall. The figure is nude and has no obvious brand logos or other marks identifying its provenance. Videos and still photo indicate that the object is anchored or perhaps confined to the area immediately surrounding Red Rock Island. There are reports from boats in the vicinity that a figure is broadcasting sound, though it is unknown whether it is issuing music or recorded statements. So far, no artist or corporation has claimed ownership or responsibility for the appearance of the phenomenon. This may be due to the controversial nudity of the figure, which appears to be very lifelike and anatomically correct. More on this story as it develops. @KindnessKills. I saw the hashtag babe this morning. There's no way it's inflatable. It's too lifelike. @3LibraSalad. Hey, @USCG is approaching the babe right now. Image. A US Coast Guard vessel pulls in front of a light brown calf, kneecap visible above the ship's antennas. @US Coast Guard. All vessels and individuals steer clear of the hashtag babe phenomenon until further notice. We are assessing the safety of the situation. SF Examiner. The hashtag babe is a real girl. Sources have identified Bianca Martinez of East Oakland, age 15, and a link. It took a couple hours to corroborate the Examiner's scoop. No one believed the claim that the girl was human and assumed the headline was a hoax or a hack. By the time the truth hit the news, thousands of pictures had been taken of the girl huddled beside a Coast Guard boat, goosebumps as large as Canada geese all over her blue-brown skin. From the East Bay Express. In the first few days after the babe, Bianca Martinez, a 15-year-old Oakland girl, appeared in the water, misinformation ruled. Between reports that she was an inflatable art object, a publicity stunt, or a pre-Burning Man exhibition of animatronic sculpture, the truth remained elusive. Yet, as Joel Rabinowitz of the SF Examiner first reported and the Coast Guard later confirmed, Ms. Martinez is a human female. More than that, she's a minor. Once positive identification was made of her DNA and matched to that of her parents, publishing or selling photos of the nude colossus became illegal. Photos have been surrendered to and seized by local police and the FBI, but the internet is keeping images alive in an echo of the fappening back in 2014. Far from being leaked or hacked, however, most of these photos were taken by legitimate journalists and printed in nationally circulated newspapers, on TV news, and on Twitter. Getting this unexpected tidal wave of child pornography under control is now as difficult as housing or feeding the babe herself. Alameda County Child Welfare has stepped in, attempting to help Martinez's parents provide for their child's gigantic needs. The struggle to clothe her has attracted donations of sailcloth and large nautical tarps, but the girl still appears to be only half clothed and constantly shivering. Food banks claimed record donations as people banded together to feed Martinez, but county officials struggled to find her somewhere to eat where people cannot crowd around to watch. The solution thus far has included Martinez wading out into the bay to eat out of her hands in relative privacy. Experts have estimated Martinez's height as somewhere around 350 feet and her weight at almost 100 tons. Her passage across the bay has disrupted ferry and fishing boat traffic, and the Coast Guard has issued a ban on all sailboats and small craft for the time being. Martinez was seen only 2 nights ago, batting dozens of drones out of the air around her, sweeping them into the sea to avoid their lights and cameras. In the carefully cropped picture that ran on the front page, pixelated starfish dotted the edge of her pubic hair like a deliberate decoration. The East Bay Express attempted to find out where the babe sleeps, but our search came up empty. From BuzzFeed. Is San Francisco's giant mystery girl human? Human rights organizations around the world are struggling with this question now as government officials on all sides hesitate to offer the girl, Bianca Martinez, any kind of aid. She's just so damn big, Oakland Mayor Laney Schiff remarked. It's difficult to think of her as a citizen of Oakland when Oakland can't begin to meet her needs. And she's taken up temporary indigent residence on various beaches and islands. I'm not sure it's strictly Oakland's issue. A representative from the Department of Human Services said the organization was unclear on their responsibilities in this case. She is 15 and she was a completely normal-sized girl a week ago. But today, tomorrow, who knows? We're waiting on a decision to see how we should deal with this. Samuel Sapporo, one of Martinez's former teachers at Oakland High, offered another point of view, saying, imagine if this was your kid. She's terrified and exposed, and there's nowhere safe for her to go. She's homeless and naked and practically starving, and we're going to argue over whether she's a person anymore. Oakland police are concerned about Martinez's superhuman strength and abilities. One officer, who asked not to be named, said, "What if she decides to walk home one day? She might flatten Chinatown, maybe knock out the MacArthur Maze while she's at it. She could destroy the BART tracks, and we couldn't do anything to stop her. That's not a person. It's a threat." Martinez's parents are reported to have limited English proficiency and have thus far refused to speak to the press. The Coast Guard arranged for them to visit their daughter last Monday, but the boat reportedly never left the dock. A source close to the family said the parents are struggling to cope. Martinez's father is a plumber and her mother is a homemaker. The family attends Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church, but they have not been spotted there in recent weeks. Representatives of the Oakland Diocese declined to comment on Bianca Martinez's humanity. Redacted.net excerpt. Why am I being harassed by the FBI and other law enforcement for posting pictures of this hot-ass teen giant? She's a big girl. She looks grown up to me. For fuck's sake, she could crush my skull with her thumb. Can she really be a victim? Talk about unrapeable. Kiss me goodbye and flick me to Oregon if I climbed up on that mountain of round ass. Redacted.com excerpt. Nobody inched along the giant's neck, taking measured little steps. Her breathing was like a hot wind that caressed him all over, whistling around his erection like a breeze through the trees. "Who's there?" she rumbled in her huge, deep voice. "Nobody," said nobody, trembling. "Oh, I don't think so. You can't fool mommy like that." The giant pinched nobody around the thigh and lifted him high in the air. He screamed in ecstasy and terror. She dropped him into her massive maw and swallowed him whole. He was engulfed in the warm, wet folds of her enormous throat. Muscles worked all around him, forcing him downward, squeezing him tight. He slipped into the total darkness of the giant's stomach, the acidic heat suffusing him with deadly desire. Nobody felt along her stomach lining until he found a comfortable, groovy place to grind his aching member against her pulsing insides. The giant gurgled happily in her sleep. At WTF Facts, Bianca Martinez, the giantess of the SF Bay, has a heart as big and as heavy as a Volkswagen Beetle. At Barely Legal 99, countdown to Bianca Martinez's 18th birthday, and a link. From the New York Times. I first met Bianca Martinez sitting on the beach in Marin County. She had been shot several times by park rangers after an altercation involving the now deceased photographer Mark Honhofer. Ms. Martinez, in her attempt to stop him from photographing her genitals close up as she slept, pulled Honhofer's left arm off his body. He died immediately from blood loss. Bianca sat cross-legged on the pebbled beach, squeezing bullets out of the skin of her forearm like a patch of blackheads. She had to whisper to me. Anything louder was overwhelming. There was no hope of privacy. I asked her if she was under arrest. She shrugged her massive shoulders, a hypnotic, rippling, rising and falling wall of flesh. They say I am, but they can't cuff me or put me in jail, so I guess I'm in trouble. At this, she made air quotes with two fingers, each the size of a full-grown dolphin. She glanced over to the park rangers, her brown eye as big as a driver's side window. I guess they could chain me to something, maybe. In the days that followed, she was approached by several different branches of law enforcement as well as DHS. The helplessness they shared was palpable as they failed to come to a decision on how to govern the giant girl's behavior. In the end, they decided that she had killed the photographer in self-defense and gave up. They're driving their squad cars and sport utility vehicles off the beach. The two of us were left with the gulls and the constant sound of drones trying to come near enough to film her while staying out of reach. I asked her what she missed. With her massive face laid on the warm rocks beside me, she whispered things that any teenage girl might name. "My friends," she said as an elephantine tear slid down her face to pool on the rocks. "My school, my clothes. I miss wearing clothes so much. I'm cold all the time. Nothing anybody has offered is even close to big enough. I just hold it against me. I dream every night that I'm back in my bed, and then I wake up and it's raining." Yesterday, Carl the Fog, the popular personification of the ever-present San Francisco fog, tweeted at Bianca that he would like to marry her. The last time I saw her, she stood up on that beach and made for the Marin Headlands, a wooded area sparsely populated by some of the richest people in the state. Local papers report that the homeowners there fear her presence and the possible damage she might do. As she reared up to her full, terrible height, the fog wrapped itself around her like the soft gray fur of an Arctic fox. Carl might be the only match for this monster of a girl. At Butt Stuffed Pizza. I went to school with Bianca since we were 8. I feel so bad for her. At Candle in the Wind, this has gone on long enough. Someone needs to help her. Hashtag babe. At Giants Fan 87, we finally have a real SF giant. Too bad she's got cramps and can't play. At BBC Breaking, Bianca Martinez, the giant of San Francisco Bay, found unresponsive on the beach, and a link. At Oaktown Rats, beached whale, image rejected. From the San Francisco Chronicle, Bianca Martinez, the Bay Area's mysterious giant girl, was found unresponsive lying on the beach near Point Richmond yesterday evening. Footage from the KPIX newscopter shows that her abdomen is slightly distended and she is bleeding from her vaginal area. Attempts to rouse her by sound or pressure applied by car have failed. Her parents were present along with their priest, who reportedly gave the girl last rites sometime after sundown. EMTs on the scene detected Martinez's pulse and confirmed that she was still alive, but could not determine the cause of her unconsciousness. Attempts to cover Martinez's body or move it back from the encroaching surf have failed. Snapchat story. She's so heavy, SF. An EMT in whites takes Martinez's pulse by leaning against her neck, forearms pressed to the skin, head turned away from the massive body as he tries to count. The vibrations of her pulse bob his head slowly, slightly. A crowd of UC Berkeley girls pose a few feet from the body, smiling until one of them realizes her shoe is sinking into the bloody sand. Martinez slowly lifts one hand, its shadow passing over the morning beach walkers and their dogs. All heads turn. A woman screams and her small dog barks self-importantly, punctuating the sound. Martinez's hand drops into the surf and the giant rises. She drags her knees through the wet sand, digging trenches large enough to drive a jeep into. Her right hand leaves a perfect print as she pushes up off the beach. Caked sand falls from her breasts and belly as she reaches her full height. Chunks come raining down, smashing apart on the ground when they hit. Cameras trained on her face pick up only a black shape against the early morning light. The giant walks into the sea, washing away blood and sand, saying nothing. sfgiantwatch.com. It's been 413 days since we last had a sighting of Bianca the giant. Rumor had it that she fled to the Farallon Islands remain unsubstantiated. The islands are out of drone range and no ship has spotted her or brought back pictures. Aircraft have not been able to locate her. Is it possible that she's dead? Did she just walk into the sea? We need answers. The giant belongs to all of us. She's a symbol of the fantastic, the awesome, the unknowable reach of human potential. Every time a lighthouse on the bay makes a circle, I hope she knows it's searching for her. California Department of Justice featured missing children. Name, Bianca Rosalba Martinez. Report type, runaway juvenile. Sex, female. Race, Hispanic. Hair, brown. Eyes, brown. Height, 370 feet. Weight, 200,000 pounds. Date of birth, 8/16/2002. Clothing, none. Last seen, 8/28/2017. Dental x-rays available? No. Bianca Martinez was last seen on a beach near the Sutro Baths. Bianca didn't know the name of the island she was on, only that she had it to herself. There were caves and rock formations on one side and flat beach on the other. She caught dolphins that wiggled helplessly between her fingers and cried when she dashed their heads against the rocks to kill them. She didn't know how to light a fire. In time, she learned to deal with the raw flesh in her mouth. She cracked whole coconuts between her teeth and cherished the warm drips of milk and sweet flesh. She tried not to eat them all, but she could not help herself. She caught tangles of kelp and ate that too, hoping it was like a vegetable. It was salty and she hated it. She grew thin. She watched the sun come up alone and go down occasionally in the company of the moon. She slept during the day, her broad brown back soaking up the sun. She walked the island at night, building sandcastles 2 stories tall. She tried to befriend seabirds, offering them shreds of fish and letting them walk on her hands. They shat on her and kept to themselves. She thought she would die of loneliness, but every time she lay down, she would wake as soon as she got cold. She jumped at the sound of airplanes. Almost 2 years had passed on the islands before she realized something was wrong. The seagulls in her palm were getting bigger. Dolphins were too big to eat. She left parts strewn on the sand and watched the crabs and flies swarm over them. She tried to measure herself against the rocks, gauging whether she could see over them from one day to the next. The change happened overnight the first time. This time, it crept into her body like a thief. She doubted it was real. She had wished for it too often. But the day came when she was shorter than the rock that she could see over only a month before. It took days for her to gather her courage to take to the water again. She had swum out to this place when she was too big for anything to stop her, too huge to carry about any obstacle. She knew that there were things in the sea that were bigger than herself now. She had acclimated herself to daylight and chose a morning with a clear sky. It took half the day to swim back. The pull of the tide yanked her further and further south. She came ashore in Monterey Bay, exhausted and with seawater in her lungs. Santa Cruz record. Santa Cruz positively identified Bianca Martinez yesterday for her spectacular reemergence from hiding. The girl formerly known as the Babe has shrunk substantially, coming in at only 100 feet tall. Local government officials scrambled to help her, noting that she has lost a considerable amount of weight and her massive ribs and hip bones were very prominent in her frame. The Walnut Avenue Family and Women's Shelter has offered to assist Miss Martinez, securing transitional housing and food donations for her. At her reduced size, they were also able to find her something resembling clothing, and she is said to be resting comfortably in a large structure somewhere in Santa Cruz County. Experts are baffled as to why the Babe suddenly lost so much of her famous mass, and the police report that said the girl herself could offer no explanation. More on this story as it develops. KPX TV News. Footage of Bianca Martinez emerging from her hangar rolls as a reporter speaks. It's coming out day here in San Francisco as Bianca Martinez, the so-called Babe, has agreed for the first time to speak on camera. We're all here watching with bated breath as she approaches. As you can see, Martinez is much smaller than she used to be and is now able to wear clothes. It looks like she's about to reach the microphone. Let's listen to see what she has to say. The reporter turns her back as the camera switches to a view of Bianca, microphone's tiny in front of her chin. She opens her mouth, but no sound is heard. After a few moments of this, her face grows confused. The reporters turn to the camera again. Looks like we have a slight technical difficulty here. Let's take a moment and review the history of the Babe phenomenon while the crew works it out. Footage rolls from Bianca's debut, blur and black bars obscuring her nudity. The prepared clips end, but the audio has not improved. Bianca turns her head and crouches to re-enter the hangar. No further word is issued. Bianca notices her sheets are bigger and bigger on her every day. She wakes up disoriented, unable to balance. Her hair is far too long, tickling the backs of her thighs. When she's only 20 feet tall, she can walk home. Cameras and drones follow, but not as many as before. She hardly noticed. From the SF Examiner, Babe has Babe. Bianca Martinez, the girl formerly known as the Babe, gave birth to her first child today at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in Oakland. At 15 feet 3 inches, Martinez is the tallest woman ever to have given birth. Her daughter, Inez, was born weighing 8 pounds exactly and is only 18 inches long. The child's father, Ricky Arden, a 32-year-old man from Oakland, laughed and joked with reporters this morning when asked about the birth. "She just slid out," Arden exclaimed, offering a gesture to illustrate. "She's so little and Bianca's so big. Must be the easiest baby ever born." Ms. Martinez was unavailable for comment. However, a source at the hospital informed us that Martinez left the hospital 2 feet shorter than what she was at intake. When Ricky left, Bianca was just over 6.5 feet tall. Inez was 4 years old, perfectly normal and well-adjusted in every way. She had not been close to her father and did not miss him for long. It was Inez who pointed out to Bianca how short she was getting. Bianca's parents never liked to remark on her size. They had accepted her back home the day she was able to fit into their house again and never talked about the intervening years. But there was no denying it when Bianca's 10-year-old daughter grew taller than she was. The mark on the wall said 4'11", but Bianca disliked numbers. The college fund had come through anonymous donors years before, intended for Bianca herself. She had never gotten around to using it, but the people at the bank said yes, she could use it for her daughter too. They had to put a box of computer paper on the floor to help her climb to the upholstered chair to sign her name. The counselor at CSU Hayward was very sensitive to people with disabilities and went out of her way to make Ms. Martinez feel welcome. She had never registered a student whose parent was a little person, and the double minority status made her giddy as she entered Inez's information into her computer. When Bianca got to her car after dropping Inez off in her first dorm room, she found that the pedal extender was too short to reach the gas. She had to adjust the length to drive herself home, sitting up on her booster seat and peering over the dashboard. Inez was the last person to see her mother. She came home one day in her sophomore year with a bursting laundry bag to find Bianca pacing back and forth across the wide pages of her scrapbook. It lay open to the images she had printed off the internet, her own towering silhouette beside the Bay Bridge. Her feet made no impression as she walked across the heavy paper and back, no taller than a dragonfly. Inez reached out her hand, unsure if she could touch her mother without hurting her. "I'm in here somewhere," Bianca said. The next day, try as she might, Inez could not find her mother at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. That was awesome. More of Meg at megelison.com. Thanks again to Cliff, and thanks to my co-host, Laura Blackwell. Next week, we're very excited to have Don Vogel and A.T. Greenblatt. Don is a prolific short story writer who's published in many venues, including The Distant Apex, Starline, and New Myths. Eliza Greenblatt just won the Nebula Award for her short story, Give the Family My Love. So it's going to be a great program. Don't miss it. And meanwhile, please stay safe. And we'll see you around. Thanks. Good night.
All right. Good night.